Hi, this is Dan Olson. This video is going to cover mutual aid and how we're reporting mutual aid. I wanted to start a little bit with some background information so you can understand what the information is that we're collecting and why it's important, and then some of the definitions associated with mutual aid. The first is, why is collecting mutual aid information important? Of course, the easy answer is there's a NFIRS, a National Incident Reporting System requirement, that we have to do it. But more importantly, from a practical perspective, mutual aid really needs to be evaluated by a fire department at least annually, or when other questions come up, because we need to be looking at, is the mutual aid mutual? There's always a grayness on each side, and very rare would you have the exact same amount of calls that the Vancouver Fire Department is going into an area providing aid, where it's called mutual aid given, as another agency, let's say Camas, is actually responding into Vancouver, which would be mutual aid received. Very rare that they'd be exact, but what we try to do is we try to keep it close, and it's not required. It's just simply good business practice to say we should be fairly close on the mutual aid that we're given and the mutual aid that we receive from an agency. And if it's not, it's a good conversation to have with that agency to find out how we could better equitably assure that we're really not subsidizing one or the other. So this information that we're collecting is actually fairly important, and it's information that I review annually, or other times when something comes up. Some of the questions about mutual aid usually revolves around its definitions. Which one do I select? So mutual aid is divided into two basic categories, as I've mentioned earlier. There's given and received. And mutual aid given is where we give mutual aid to another entity, and then mutual aid is received is when we're receiving it from another entity. So if we respond to a fire in District 6, that is mutual aid given. If Camas comes to an EMS call for us in Station 9's area, that is mutual aid received. There's also some other classifications or definitions needed, because you'll see in the NFIRS report that there's automatic aid and there's mutual aid. Classically, those two areas have been defined as mutual aid being when someone requests a response from another fire department. So it's usually a manual request over the radio for assistance. Automatic aid has usually been defined as the aid that's been given or received that's pre-prescribed by how the CAD system deploys units. So the concept of closest unit response, or the closest unit to an incident, regardless of a political subdivision, responds to the call. That would be an automatic aid agreement. Both of those are usually solidified through a automatic mutual aid agreement that specifies the conditions about how automatic aid would be utilized and mutual aid would be utilized. So those are really the definitions. Some of the confusion of this in our response area in particular comes in because we also have an ambulance transport contract with AMR to provide ambulance transport services. They have separate mutual aid and automatic aid agreements with the other transport agencies within Clark County, Camas and North Country. And so it's important for us to realize that, and as I walk through the different bullets under this outline, you're going to see that the conditions where we need to be careful about whether we calculate it as mutual aid received or not. And remember, these numbers are important to us, and so it's important that you understand how to categorize it correctly, especially in this confusing area of transport medical provision, the transport medical provider, AMR, and their business relationships with the other entities within Clark County. So we'll start with mutual aid given. Remember, this is where we are giving mutual aid to someone. So this is an incident report shall be completed for all mutual aid or regional incidents where the VFD is dispatched. Again, we have a legal, a political concern. We also need to document what we did, and we need to document that we actually provided it. We also, for incidents outside the VFD service area, the report only needs to reflect the VFD units dispatched. So we're not going into, say, District 6 to document what they're doing at a fire, but we are going in to document our units, their times, and what they did at that fire. The third bullet, for fire incidents outside the VFD service area, where the VFD responds with only VFD units, the strategic IC shall complete a fire report, a fire module report. So if we go into, let's say, Clark County Fire District 3, and none of their units respond there, we arrive, assume command, and we are the only entity there. We need to do a complete fire module report as we would for our area. For incidents outside our service area where we respond with host agency units, so if we respond to that same call but Fire District 3 had a battalion chief or other engines there, we actually want you to input a very specific incident type code. It's the 900 code. We don't want you to put in the normal code for, let's say that you were responding in for a structure fire, because that's going to create a bunch of other reporting requirements that are just not necessary when a call is outside of our political subdivision of the City of Vancouver and Fire District 5. That information is not relevant to us. It's only relevant to our geographic area. So the incident type for mutual aid given, when there's the host agency has units there, is a 900. If there are no host agency units there, then we need to complete an entire fire module report. Last bullet under mutual aid given, the strategic IC shall remove any non-VFD units from the unit list prior to locking the fire module report, because again, we're not going to document the service level that Fire District 3 has with their units. All we're interested is our times and our units. So that's really the concept around mutual aid given. Mutual aid received, this is where we're receiving mutual aid from another department. If mutual aid is received by the VFD and the VFD responds, the strategic IC will assure the dates and times for each mutual aid unit are complete. This is important because we have a standard of cover that addresses the time standards that we have to achieve, and we're required to report annually for all of those calls the service level that is provided by the system. The system includes the Vancouver Fire Department resources, but it also includes the system resources of mutual and automatic aid companies surrounding our service area. So it is essential that we capture the units and their time of arrival. Second bullet, units dispatched to fulfill a transport role. Now this is that confusing area that I mentioned earlier, where AMR has a business relationship with Camas and a business relationship with North Country to provide transport services to fulfill their contract for transport services within our service area. Units dispatched to fulfill a transport role are not mutual aid received by the VFD. And that's very important. We should not be selecting mutual aid received when Camas comes into our area and they're providing aid for the contracted transport agency. So we don't want to identify them as mutual aid received, and this strategic IC shall remove these units from the unit list prior to locking the fire module report. So how will we know that that's what they're doing? Well, generally, They're not on a first response basis, and it's when AMR would not be arriving. So if AMR doesn't arrive and CAMUS does with a unit to transport the patient, that is a mutual aid with AMR. If CAMUS arrives and AMR arrives, that is a mutual aid received because it's under our contract for auto mutual aid with CAMUS for first response. So it's a clarifying point. The last bullet under mutual aid received is if mutual aid is received by the VFD with no VFD response. So there's a call that occurs. For whatever reason, we have no resources available or close. In those instances, our operations analyst is actually going to audit all reports on a monthly basis to identify these kinds of incidents, and the operations analyst is actually going to create a fire module report for each of these incidents, inputting an incident type again of 900. Because we didn't do anything associated with that alarm. It was all mutual aid companies, and our operations analyst will put into the narrative section and point to the agency that provided that service as our incident report. So that's really the particulars about mutual aid. Again, we're hitting some policy and clarification points because we're trying to tighten up our reporting methodology as we're implementing the new RMS system, ESO Solutions. Thank you.